All right, let's try that again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And I guess you people on Zoom didn't hear me when I started, so we'll just do it again. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan. My name is Dick Beeman. I'll be your convener. I was telling the group here that all of them are wearing costumes. I'm delighted to see that. And you at home, too, are also wearing costumes, even if it's the same one you wore last week. The theme of the month for this month is courage. And of course, the theme of Halloween is masks and costumes, hiding your true self, pretending to be something other, or maybe you're not hiding and pretending. Maybe instead you're expanding the limits of your true self, expressing your creativity and adventuresomeness. Reflecting on that dichotomy made me think about the tension or the incompatibility between having the courage to be yourself versus having the courage to change yourself. It takes courage to look at yourself with a critical eye, to reevaluate your own convictions and priorities, to imagine a different version of yourself, to step out of yourself, out of your comfort zone, to put on a costume you've never worn before, to take your life in a new direction, or to take on a task you're not sure you can handle. But it also takes courage just to be yourself as you are now, to speak your own individual truths, even at the risk of public disapproval. Today at UUFM, we welcome and embrace the true version of yourself at this moment in your personal journey, the real you as you are today, with all your exotic and distinctive thoughts and opinions, with all the imperfections and warts and rarities and uniquenesses that all of us harbor. You might think you're an outlier, but you're not the only one who thinks they're the only one who's different. You're not the only one who thinks they're the only one who is struggling. We're all different and we're all struggling. All of us have moments when we need a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen. And here at UUFM, I've noticed there are shoulders and ears all over the place, hundreds of them. So once again, welcome to all with your public selves, your secret selves, your provisional selves, your selves in progress, and with all your caring and sympathetic ears and shoulders. One way to express ourselves is through our art, and I'm happy to announce that yesterday, gallery guru Rob Morrison, is Rob here today? Gallery guru Rob Morrison and I set up the new art exhibit in the narthex. So after the service and after the trunk or treat extravaganza in the upper parking lot, by the way, please take a peek into the souls of a few of our UU artists by viewing their paintings, sculpture, pottery, and photography.
Thank you, Dick, for that warm welcome. I'm Pastor Isabel Call, and I serve as the minister of this diverse, evolving spiritual community acting for a better world. Today, I'm sporting some extra ears to help you and help me remember that my primary role as pastor here is to listen. Thanks to everyone who is helping to make this a festive Halloween. I'm so excited for Trunk or Treat. It'll be in the upper parking lot this year. And thanks to Mark and Terrence from Prairie Wind Farms for the pumpkins that are down in the parking lot. Feel free to take one home. One announcement to highlight: this Tuesday at Uncorked Inspiration in Aggieville, I'll be joining with several other progressive women religious leaders for an event called Democracy Uncorked. So you're welcome to come hear us talk about the upcoming election, how we're bringing our faith into the ballot box, and guidance for talking to others about the election. We take time at the beginning of our services to lift up the voices of Native people, remember forgotten or erased history of our land, and look to Native leadership to remind us of our true purpose. Today, I'll be reading from How It Is, the Native American philosophy of VF Cordova. Throughout North America, indigenous peoples have the notion that they are co-creators of their world. We can bring things into existence that did not exist before. There are various versions of a mythic tale told in the Southwest about the monster slayer. He or they, as they are often twin sons of the earth and the sun, come to the people to rescue them from monsters raging the earth. Some monsters are slain, but not all of them. Some give good arguments for why they should remain. Death, for example, is allowed to remain, for without dying, death claims, there could be no new people born, for the earth would soon become overpopulated. Hunger is allowed to exist because it maintains the industriousness of the people. Lice are left behind because they force the people to keep themselves and their environs clean. One monster that is slain is fear. For all else, the people must accommodate themselves. Those monsters not specifically named that happen to arise are the responsibility of the people themselves. No hero will assist in these circumstances. One example of a human-created monster is war. Humans alone are responsible for the creation and the ousting of this monster. So may we hold this responsibility with integrity, refusing to feed the war monster who continues to occupy our communities and our minds. We don't yet know how we will slay this monster, but we will keep trying. Our chalice lighting.
It's a pretty difficult little piece of equipment, it looks like. Need some matches.
Today's chalice words are adapted from Philippe Vernier. Don't wait for strength and pluck, guts and gall before setting out on a difficult or uncertain mission. Hesitation will only weaken your resolve. Don't wait for clear vision before starting out. Just start walking towards the light. When you perform that tiny act of taking the first step, you'll be astonished to find that the effort, rather than exhausting your strength and diminishing your courage, has instead magnified them, and that you already see more clearly what that next step might be. Courage and fear are cousins, not opposites. Courage is fear walking. Please stand in body and spirit and join me in singing hymn number 1, and we'll be singing only verses 1 and 4 for this one. Today's Time for All Ages is a pre-recorded video of Dick Beeman reading Dan Yaccarino's story entitled Unlovable. So all the young or young at heart are invited either to come forward and sit at the front, or if you think you can see the screen better from the back, just stay seated where you are.
Unlovable by Dan Yaccarino. Alfred was unlovable. At least that's what the cat told him every chance he got. You've got the ugliest mug I've ever seen. No one could love you. Alfred tried his best to ignore the remarks, but it was difficult, especially since the cat had taught the parrot to say, "I'm lovable, Squawk. I'm lovable. I'm lovable," whenever Alfred walked by. The goldfish gurgled in agreement. But what was it that made him unlovable? His snoring? The way he ate? His little curly tail? None of the neighborhood dogs would have a thing to do with him. His mouth is too small to hold a ball, a big German shepherd sneered. His legs are way too short for running, snickered a greyhound. A pamper poodle chuckled. Ha! Did you see that face? Beat it, shrimp, growled the Doberman. You couldn't even scare a milkman. Alfred didn't like staying in the house, since the cat was always making fun of him. The parrot was always squawking, "Unlovable, unlovable," and the goldfish was always gurgling in agreement. So Alfred spent most of his time alone in the backyard. One day, a new family moved in next door. Alfred tried to see if they had a dog who might be his friend, but he was too little to look over the fence. As he was sniffing around, he heard something on the other side. "Hello?" Alfred called. "Hi," came the answer. "I'm Rex. I just moved in. My name is Alfred." And without thinking, he blurted out, "I'm a golden retriever." "Glad to meet you," Rex replied. Alfred and Rex talked for hours. Alfred said he liked sleeping in the sun, dog food, and scratching. Rex did too. Rex said he hated baths and going to the vet. Alfred did too. It began to get dark. Soon it was time for dinner, and they both went inside. That night, Alfred thought about how much he liked Rex and how much they had in common. Then he thought about the fib he had told. Alfred was sure they'd be friends. Well, as long as Rex never saw how unlovable he was. The next day, when Alfred and Rex were chatting, a squirrel jumped onto the fence between them. They both barked at it. The squirrel took one look at Alfred and climbed up a tree. Rex said, "You sure showed that squirrel who's boss, Alfred." But Alfred was thinking, if Rex ever sees me, he'll run away too. "I'm going to dig a hole under the fence," Rex said one day. "Then I can squeeze through to your side and we can meet." Alfred heard Rex digging. When he heard Rex wiggle under the fence, he ran and hid behind a bush. Then he heard Rex call, "Alfred, where are you?" Suddenly, Rex poked his head into the bush where Alfred was hiding. You look just like me," gasped Alfred. "Wow, this is great," said Rex. "You're not a golden retriever at all." Alfred had to laugh. Who cared what the others said? Rex was his friend, and Rex liked him just the way he was. Together, Alfred and Rex ran. They jumped. They played. And Alfred never felt unlovable again.
Each of you contributes to the life of this fellowship in different ways, tangible and intangible, by sharing your knowledge and expertise, your wealth, your time, even just your company, your presence among us, or by some combination of these. Whatever your gifts to the congregation, we hope that you will continue to regularly recommit to our communal life. May we all continue to see the value that our cooperative efforts enable. Here at UUFM, the offering we receive on Sunday morning goes to a different worthy charity or service organization each month. And this month, our Helping Hands recipient is the Crisis Center. You can donate online by going to uufm.net, then clicking on the donate link and choosing the particular fund to which you want to contribute. And if you're here in person, you can put your offering in the basket at the back of the sanctuary. I'd also like to invite you to share your joys and sorrows this week. And during the offertory, you can write your joy or sorrow on a piece of paper that you will find on behind the seat somewhere in the row in front of you. Raise your hand if you need a pen or a pencil. I will circulate around and collect them. Raise your hand. Hold them up during the offertory. I invite you now to enjoy our offering, which is Renee's rendition of Sally's song from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Renee. We've come to the time in our service when we share our sorrows and amplify our celebrations. Let us call up a spirit of generosity, vulnerability, courage, and compassion as we listen to what has been shared. Several joys here in the sanctuary. Thank you. So from Susan A., happy to announce our Afghan baby boom continues. Baby girl born 2 weeks ago and 3 more on the way. Yeah. Congratulations to those families.
Wow.
Christy and Susan share, we are joyful that some friends are joining us for trunk or treat today. Yes. We have from Michael Oldfather, Mel is back. And I remember this one from last year. I believe Mel is a hawk? Am I remembering that correctly? I guess it will remain a mystery. You'll have to ask Michael. And a joy from Pat Embers, who shares last evening, Diane Barker and I and others from Manhattan saw the play in Lawrence titled We Own This Now by the Ted and Company Theater. It was a creative live production of how the doctrine of discovery has and still is displacing the lives, hearts, and physical location of Native people for the last 500 years. And it was a joy to see, although disturbing. And she encourages folks. There are a couple more showings here in Kansas next week. So these are the joys here in the sanctuary. Kathleen, what's going on in Zoom land?
Oh, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, great. Well, my joy is I have 23 people sharing the Zoom meeting with me. And one of them, Linda Johnson, said that it's a joy to hear Sylvia read a story. She does the voices so well. And that was the only joy specifically expressed.
Well, thank you. Are there any sorrows coming in on Zoom?
Well, we do have one. She referred to it as a concern from Emily Frazier and her update on her back situation. We found out she's on her back this morning. She found out from the neurosurgery that they won't schedule a consultation until she sees a pain management provider. She got a referral from a doctor to pain management, found out that they're very backed up until December 6th. So she's anxious to move it to the next step. But evidently there are closures and healthcare shortages, worker shortages. That's all we had.
So sorry to hear that, Emily. Thank you for sharing with us. Hope we can share the burden. We have one sorrow here in the sanctuary from Livia Olson. She writes, I'm thinking of my mom and others who belong to the United Methodist Church who are concerned about upcoming decisions in their church about the status of LGBTQ plus people. Thank you for lifting that up. Join in waiting for that conversation. Please join me for a moment of silence as we honor the joys and sorrows that have been shared, as well as those that remain quietly within our hearts.
I recently learned that the Zulu word for hello is sawubona, which translates to I see you, and in seeing you, I bring you into being. The greeting has a deeper connotation, namely that I see you and I take you into my heart with all your virtues, nuances, and imperfections. The typical response is shiboka, which means I exist for you. By this exchange, the two greeters don't merely acknowledge each other, they animate each other. None of us are really present unless we almost literally bring each other into being by seeing each other. But it's not always wise or appropriate to be fully seen. There are many situations where some filter between thoughts and words should remain in place, and people should be kept at arm's length. We have to wear masks and costumes in both the figurative and literal sense when discretion, restraint, or caution are called for, or in the daily work of contributing to a functioning society. where intimate familiarity or complete openness and honesty are unnecessary or undesirable, and where it is our job to play a particular role, to wear a particular mask. A doctor wears a mask and scrubs in the operating room. The mail carrier has to be distinguishable from a trespasser as he reaches into your mailbox. The grocery clerk doesn't need to plumb your deepest hopes and fears while tallying your purchases. We might use costumes as adornments to celebrate and exult in ourselves, or to experiment with possible new incarnations of ourselves, to pose as different selves we might aspire to become. Or we might use costumes for theater, for imaginative expression, for storytelling, or just to experience the magic and fun of trying on the skin of a different being. But one of the most unhappy things we do with masks and costumes is to hide behind them out of self-doubt or fear of drawing attention to our true selves. We may be stuck in a hopeless effort to live up to the mirage of what we think other people expect. We all want to be liked, valued, respected, included, but we might fear that if we become truly seen, if people knew our flaws, secrets, inner thoughts, they'd give us the cold shoulder. Ironically, keeping our real selves too opaquely masked for fear of rejection can actually deprive us of the deep, honest, intimate relationships with others that we all need. Alfred the Pug learned that lesson in today's Story for All Ages. It takes courage to be true to yourself when you know that doing so might bring disapproval, ridicule, rejection, or worse. Such courage is especially wonderful to behold in children. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, one of my best friends was a kid my age who had a deep sense of moral outrage. He was small for his age, but he would, without hesitation, confront and berate any bully in the act of bullying. On one occasion, I saw him advise a bully firmly, a bully bigger and older than himself, that he, the bully, was now going to apologize to his victim, right now. He escorted the offender across the street, where he did indeed apologize. He actually made that bully feel remorse. And his power over the bully had nothing to do with physical intimidation. That kind of righteous action came as naturally to my friend as breathing. What made him that way? What makes any of us become the unique individual that each of us is? Viola Cordova, the Arapaho philosopher that Pastor Isabel quoted earlier, says that in many Native American traditions, a child does not come into the world with full personhood or selfness. It is still too deeply integrated into the greater family of beings, the cosmos of its origin. It begins life still nameless, its only defining attribute being that it is of the place of its birth. Its selfhood and individuality, even its name, will emerge only over a period of years. This being will always belong to something greater than itself. It will never be cut off from family, even by the death or separation of its parents. The term family having a much broader and more inclusive reach in such Native traditions than in the Euro-American tradition, and denoting a much closer kinship with all beings, including what they regarded as the non-human people. According to Cordova, what she refers to as the dominant Euro-man views himself as an autonomous, superior being, divorced from attachment to place, trapped inside a hostile environment. In the overcrowded cities of this Euro-man, the white child risks descent into disconnectedness and anonymity. The Native American, says Cordova, knows that she is part of an all-encompassing web of belonging to the environment, to the earth, which is her producer, her sustainer, her mother, and that she is dependent on and responsible for the earth and all the many and diverse beings of her extended human and non-human family, past, present, and future. For each of us to discover and embrace our unique selfness, maybe we would be well advised to incorporate the lessons of that philosophy. Nurture a sense of place, discover where we belong, understand our connectedness, and have the courage to explore who we are not, and who we might become. Listen to Dr. Seuss, who said, "Today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." Or consider Oscar Wilde's pithy edict, "Be yourself. Everyone else is taken." Please now rise in body and spirit and join me in singing hymn 146, "Soon the Day Will Arrive." Arise.
The Celtic New Year holiday, Samhain, which gave us our American Halloween, is believed to originate in the land now known as Ireland. Specifically at Rathcroghan, a site for festivals complete with massive earthen mounds. While these are human-made, there is also a natural cave called Owen Nagat, from whose mouth, it is understood, issue forth monsters from the underworld, the other world. So here's some information from the National Geographic article Dick gave me for this service. Samhain was when the invisible wall between the living world and the other world disappeared, said Mike McCarthy, a Rathcroghan tour guide and researcher. A host of fearsome otherworldly beasts emerged to ravage the surrounding landscape and make it ready for winter. Thankful for the agricultural efforts of the spirits, but wary of falling victim to their fury, the people protected themselves from physical harm by lighting ritual fires on hilltops and in fields. And, this is the important part, they disguised themselves as fellow ghouls, McCarthy says, so as not to be dragged into the other world via the cave. So here we are, thousands of years and thousands of miles away, but right alongside our Irish cousins and ancestors, reckoning with monsters. Are you afraid? One thing Dick and I came to in our conversation is our admiration of people who appear to be fearless when confronting monsters. But we don't actually know from Dick's story whether his friend felt fear when confronting the bully. What we know is that something came over him. Dick called it selfness, that empowered him to demand a different course of events than what would have occurred without his intervention. He saved his small society of young people from being dragged down into the hell of domination and victimization. Now, we inherited our tendency to bully others from our ape ancestors. But according to the evolutionary anthropologist Christopher Boehm, who specializes in primates, what makes societies distinctively human is our ability to make the conscious decision not to act that way. For instance, and here I'm quoting from a book I will introduce in a moment, while gorillas do not mock each other for beating their chests, humans do so regularly. Even more strikingly, while the bullying behavior might well be instinctual, counter-bullying is not. It's a well thought out strategy. We have the capacity to understand what our society might look like if we did things differently. This is the essence of politics, the ability to reflect consciously on different decisions one society could take and to make explicit arguments about why it should take one path and not the other. And I'll add, to make choices and take collective action to change paths. So the quote came from the book The Dawn of Everything by two anthropologists, David Graeber and David Wengrow, who posit that this human capacity has been highly developed and highly active for thousands of years. The notion that our current widespread patriarchal, extractive, violent dominance is somehow the inevitable outcome of human advancement is complete hogwash, they say. It doesn't have to be like this. We don't have to stay stuck. So the history of Samhain felt like a good connection to these anthropologists' work. Seasonal population hubs they have found at extensive monumental sites like Rathcrowan occurred all over the planet. And if you read David and David's 700-page tome, they will take you to many of them. They were created long before farming by societies that dispersed into smaller bands when the seasons provided sustenance for foraging. Seasonal festivals marking the end of the agricultural season were adaptations of rituals marking the transition from dispersed foraging lifestyle to winter congregations of hibernators. The festivals were fun and chaotic. People put on costumes and tried new ways of being together. Sometimes, I'm quoting here, these could involve creating temporary kings or even ritual police with real coercive powers, though often, peculiarly, the ritual police doubled as clowns. In other cases, they involved dissolving norms of hierarchy and propriety, as in the Inuit midwinter orgies. In the European Middle Ages, saints' days alternated between solemn pageants, where all the elaborate ranks and hierarchies of feudal life were made manifest, much as they still are in, say, a college graduation, when we temporarily revert to medieval garb, and crazy carnivals in which everyone played at turning the world upside down. In carnival, Women might rule over men. Children be put in charge of government. Servants could demand work from their masters. Ancestors could return from the dead. Carnival kings could be crowned and then dethroned. Giant monuments like wicker dragons built and set on fire, or all formal ranks might even disintegrate in one or another form of bacchanalian chaos. What we now know as Stonehenge, one island over from Rathcroghan, was the last in a long sequence of ceremonial structures that hosted seasonal gatherings, originally erected in timber. Like the earliest wood henges in the same place, Stonehenge was not built by farmers. But here's where it gets interesting. The people who built Stonehenge were the descendants of farmers. Farming had come to the British Isles from mainland Europe in the midst of the seasonal monument building and congregating. Stonehengers had tried out farming. And then around 3300 BC, they gave it up, returning to collecting hazelnuts as a staple. They did continue to keep pigs and cattle, feasting on them at these seasonal festivals. The authors I quoted earlier are convinced that this was a self-conscious decision. There's no evidence that farmers were displaced or overwhelmed by forager communities. We'll never know how they made the decision, but we do know that despite their unsophisticated, gluten-free lifestyle, they nonetheless organized extremely large stones to be moved from as far away as Wales. They knew what they were doing. The builders of these monuments and the hosts of humanity's earliest trunk or treats were organized political actors who made collective decisions, despite dispersing into small groups for more than half the year. David Wengrow and David Graeber argue actually it was because they dispersed and came back together, they danced with seasonality, that they were able to experiment and thrive. It was a collective practice of changing costumes. But anthropologists, particularly the ones who get published and don't get thrown out of their research groups for being anarchists, tend to ignore the role of seasonality. And so you probably haven't heard this story before. Why is seasonality ignored? Why do we not think about all of our ancestors dispersing for most of the year and then coming together for festivals with a completely different way of living? Well, one reason we don't hear this story is that it's confusing. Every human group did it differently. The story does not lend itself to an industrial cookie cutter. Quote, "There is no single pattern. The only consistent phenomenon is the very fact of alteration and the consequent awareness of different social possibilities." So, what does this all have to do with fear and fearlessness and courage? Many of us are walking around afraid right now. We are afraid of an extremist takeover of our institutions of governance and our structures of social safety. Although the neighbors we run into at the grocery store seem like decent folks, there are evil forces somewhere, monsters in the airwaves spreading disinformation, trying to steal elections. There's a way that it feels inevitable, as if we finally reached the end of our effort to stave off the end of human decency. The war monster from the other world is finally going to win. We can put on masks, try to blend in, but I don't really think that's the wisdom of our highly intelligent ancestors, the indigenous ones of this place and of Europe and elsewhere. With all due respect to National Geographic, I doubt that the Halloween origin story about scared peasants imitating monsters as a form of self-protection is the most important ritual that went on at Rathcroghan. 5,500 years, layers and layers of human experimentation have never been dug up. And so we don't know what was going on. In all likelihood, something different was going on every year. Luckily, new remote sensing technology is being developed to study the sites without destroying them. And I expect in coming years, we'll learn something new, something that doesn't fit within our candy-crusted, colonized narrative of human history, if we're willing to. If we're willing to get in touch with our selfness, individually and collectively. Dick told me, in retrospect, I realized that my courageous friend was, in a way, telling the bully that he, the bully, was in possession of a better self, and that he just needed to let it emerge, almost as if he, the friend, was giving the bully credit for righting the wrong voluntarily and in earnest, rather than merely mouthing an apology out of necessity. My friend's power over the bully, Dick said earlier, had nothing to do with physical intimidation. And that kind of righteous action came as naturally to my friend as breathing. That's because it is as natural as breathing. It's part of our human birthright to stand up to bullies, whether we're afraid of them or not. And as bullies, it is also our human birthright to let our true selves emerge and to try on new costumes to facilitate that. When the colonizers arrived, the indigenous ancestors of this place firmly advised them to shape up and restore their humanity. Their descendants and their allies continue to do so. We know that the monster of war is a human creation, not an otherworldly being, not somebody we can trick into ignoring us by playing along. Let's play a different game. So this Halloween, this change of seasons, this eve of the election, do not be afraid. And if you are afraid, keep going anyway. Know that you are part of an all-encompassing web of belonging to the earth and the many diverse beings of your extended human and non-human family, past, present, and future. Know that the past is rich with your ancestors' creative and courageous humanity. The future is completely free to be determined. And the present, right now, noon o'clock on Halloween Eve, is a time for play. So before you hustle over to the festival in the parking lot, let's jump up and do some singing and playing. So please rise in body or spirit. We're going to sing a few verses of do when the Spirit says do, and I'm going to shout out some suggestions of things we might do as we sing. When the Spirit says boo, boo when the Spirit says boo. All right, thank you all. Our closing words here as Dick extinguishes our chalice. Let us see and hear and bear witness to one another with all our virtues, nuances, and imperfections, masks or no masks. Let us exist for each other, finding trust in our playful co-creation of a world even better than we can imagine. Go forth and play.